Jesse Goldberg Strassler, and it's time for our Lansing Lugnuts Friday conversation. Let me introduce you to the Lansing Lugnuts Vice President of Business Development, Steve Malliet, wearing his Milwaukee Bucks shirt. Steve, good to
Oh,
see you.
I had to represent today, Jesse. I'm a big Giannis Antetokounmpo fan.
These have been the best days for the Bucks in a long
Oh,
time for that franchise.
like never before. I think since Kareem.
Okay, I could talk basketball with you. I love talking basketball. Let's talk some baseball. How did you first become a baseball fan?
Well, you know what? It was instilled in me from my dad, who was a big, actually Milwaukee Braves fan, if you can believe that. So when I grew up, a Hank Aaron fan, huge Hank Aaron fan. So, I went to the Atlanta Braves for my, basically was my childhood team. And then gradually when Robin Yount and Paul Molitor came along, I became a Milwaukee Brewers fan. So it's as a child. So that was a long time ago, but Robin Yount and Paul Molitor were my heroes, and I watched them growing up, and I really saw baseball the way it should be played, and with the passion to be played the right way. And those two to this day, thank them for my love of baseball.
How was it to watch Harvey's Wall Bangers?
Well, we had other characters too, like Cecil Cooper and Gorman Thomas and Ben Ogilvy, and I could go right down the list. But yeah, it was amazing because back then hitting 200 home runs in a season was unheard of, and nowadays it's commonplace. But yes, referred to as Harvey's Wall Bangers. So it was a lot of fun.
I wonder, you work in baseball. You've worked in baseball for a while. Have you had the chance to meet any of your heroes in person?
Yeah, I did. We do these Legends games where I've been in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Wisconsin with the Timber Rattlers when we started up the ballpark there. We did these Legends games, and I got a chance to meet a lot of these guys. Robin Yount, in particular, got a chance to spend a lot of time with him and get to know him better. And then when I joined the Milwaukee Brewers as their corporate sales manager, I was able to really get to know a lot of those guys too. So,
did you have any jobs in baseball before joining the Brewers?
Yeah, the Timber Rattlers actually was my first new ballpark, and I was just out of college, and I spent a year and a half with the Timber Rattlers, actually called the Appleton Foxes at the time. And got hired by their general manager, Frank Gale, to basically be the jack of all trades. But I was able to prove that I could sell. That was probably the biggest thing that moved my career forward in baseball, is being able to go out and relate to people and just have a good time talking to people. And I think after a while, you call it sales, but really what it's all about is just getting to know people and having them relax around you and trust you. And talking baseball, like I said, I can't say as though it's been sales because I love doing it, and you get to do what you love. I don't think it's ever really been a job to me.
What year thereabouts did you join the Appleton Foxes?
Actually became a part of that organization in 1993.
Roundabout then. The reason why these were great years for the Seattle Mariners, especially
Yeah.
in their farm system. Who did you have on your Foxes teams?
Yes, in '94, a young man by the name of Alex Rodriguez came around, and he was just right out of high school. There were rumors that he was going to go to Miami, to the University of Miami, and I think he almost got there. But they plucked him right out of class before his first class started, and signed him to a huge contract. So, and then a week or two later, he was in Appleton, Wisconsin. So, in our starting shortstop in the Midwest League at the old ballpark called Goodland Field at the time.
What was that like, seeing Alex Rodriguez as a teenage minor league baseball player?
Oh, you know what? You couldn't tell he was a teenager. I mean, he was so much more. Oh gosh, I mean, he was full grown at the time. He was full grown man at the time at 18, and he was just a physical freak of nature. I mean, saw how far he hit the ball in batting practice the first time out, and it just, it was just, you knew he was special because you know how the sound of the bat is different when it hits the ball from a big league baseball player, especially the really good hitters. He had that at 18. So, you just knew he was special.
You and I talk about players giving back, players becoming part of the community and helping to sell the team too.
Yes.
Did Alex Rodriguez interact very much with the fans in Appleton?
He did. One of the craziest things, and all my interns loved it that year, and I had several, young male interns, and the reason they loved Alex being around is because Alex seemed to attract a lot of young ladies to the ballpark. So all of a sudden, we had 500 young ladies there every night that we didn't have before, out to see Alex Rodriguez. So they didn't mind it at all. So, but yeah, it did kind of change things. And Alex was very good about, connecting with people and talking to people. He was very down to earth. He even came in when he first got to town, came in our office and sat down and said, "Hey, I would like to." We didn't have a school program at the time, and he wanted to sponsor the tickets and pay for the tickets for the kids who got A's and B's. So for an 18-year-old kid to come in and sit down across from you and say, "Hey, just let me know how much I need to pay you, and I'll have my agent send you a check. So, but I'd like to sponsor the A's and B's."
How did that go over? Okay, so that's where things started. He said, "I want to sponsor it." How did that program work out?
I think it was great. We had, obviously, minor league baseball in 1993 was dramatically different. If we got a crowd of 800 to 1,200 people, it was a pretty good crowd that night. And it was a little landlocked neighborhood wood grandstand ballpark, and that's what the Midwest League was back then. So until Kane County came along and some of the other great franchises in the league now, but it was unrecognizable from what the Midwest League is today.
Well, you mentioned you were there for the birth of the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers.
Yes.
So the Foxes, and you work with the Brewers, and here are the Timber Rattlers. What part did you play with the Foxes becoming the Timber Rattlers and the new stadium opening up?
Well, I was the central figurehead in that happening. And the team name change was probably the most dramatic thing for people in the area to accept. I still remember people sending me letters, kind of nasty letters too, saying, "I'll never buy anything with a snake on it." So of course, you get a lot of those reactions. I'm sure here, Tom Dixon got the same letter, and Tom Glick, and the Lugnuts is this or that, but people hated the fact that we were changing their beloved Appleton Foxes to the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers. And we decided to go Wisconsin too, because I really like the regionality and including the entire state. I wanted to have the team become a statewide known team. And I wanted to sell merchandise to everybody across the state and even beyond. So yeah, it was a fun thing, and I was too young to know what I was doing, and but we had a great time with it, and it became something very special. Became one of the top selling logos in all of minor league baseball back in the mid '90s, and I still think it's doing pretty well now. And the organization. The president now, Rob Zerja, was one of our interns back in 1996. So he still looks like he did back in 1996. I don't know how he does that, but Rob was, I think they referred to him as the Doogie Howser of minor league baseball.
Ah.
So, and then my assistant was Gary, or two assistants, Mike Burling, who's now with the Durham Bulls, is their president, and Gary Mays, who was vice president of Mandalay Sports and the Dayton Dragons later. So they were on my staff as well, which was a fantastic staff. I couldn't go wrong.
Steve, this sounds like, they talk about the Bill Walsh coaching tree or the Andy Reid coaching tree. The head coach and all of his assistants go on to become big head coaches. The Wisconsin Timber Rattlers front office executive tree.
Well, you know what? They made me famous. I didn't make them famous. They were so good and they worked so hard. It did make things much easier for me. And they're just really talented people who weren't afraid to roll up their sleeves and really get after it. So I owe a lot to those guys, and there's a reason they're in the positions they're in today. So I'm very grateful for Gary Mays and for Mike Burling.
When you talk about rolling up your sleeves, I associate the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers with snow. That has been my experience. The Lugnuts have gotten snowed out there.
Yes.
What did you have to deal with? What were all the different obstacles to you in order to make sure that that stadium was ready and welcoming fans?
Well, you know what? We we had some interesting obstacles. I remember chipping ice off the field for opening day. In fact, 1996, I was out and I had just taken the position with the Brewers, but I came up and helped out for that day, and we were chipping ice off the field. But 95, when we opened the ballpark, we had an ice slash wintry mix day, and the umpires, the coaches, everybody wanted to cancel the game, but we had a full house and opening night, and everybody wanted to be there and enjoy it, even though it was freezing cold. It was packed and everybody came. And we just so happened to have a gentleman by the name of Jerry Davis, a National League umpire at the time, who actually worked on my staff all that off season as a salesperson. So Jerry was there that night and he came down and asked if he could help. And I said, hey, would you mind talking to the umpires for me? And of course, if Jerry Davis walks up to you, it's like, for a young umpire like that, it's like, wow, it's Jerry Davis, So Jerry just had a conversation with them and said, hey, it'll be all right. Let's get some innings in and get it started. The field's playable. So he convinced them that we needed to roll ahead. And of course, they listened to him. So
I want to stick with Jerry Davis just for a second, because I
yes.
savor baseball stories the same way I savor glazed donuts. You've got a Major League Baseball umpire there in your office. Did he tell any stories from umpiring? Did he tell any stories about major leaguers?
Well, and when it was funny because he took us to Wrigley Field later that year and we got to go out on the field and meet everybody. And, he did have some stories for us. I mean, he talked about Eric Gregg, who was one of his partners. And it was funny, we got to meet Eric Gregg and he just took us around and man, it was great just seeing things from that side of it too. But it's funny when the umpires are at the ballpark, they get treated really well. And I guess I never realized that, but in the big leagues, they're like one of the team. They walk in, everybody's rolling out the red carpet for them. Their clubhouses are beautiful. Everything is just at the big league level. They're extremely well taken care of, which was eye-opening for me. So, but Jerry kind of brought us into his world a little bit. We got to see the underneath of Wrigley Field and it wasn't, I'm sure comparatively to what they have today, wasn't that great. But for me back then, it was pretty awesome to see all of that. So.
I want to stay in 1996.
Yes.
1996, I believe that was the year that the Seattle Mariners rolled into Appleton for an exhibition.
Yes.
Were you on site that day?
I wasn't. I just joined the Milwaukee Brewers before the season, so Mike Burling had taken over for me. We had planned everything as a staff, and I was part of that and selling the sponsorships and all that, getting it ready and planning it with the Seattle Mariners. But I know it very well. I know the story very well.
Go ahead and tell it. Tell it from your perspective.
Well, yeah, Mike tells it very well too. But they got very bad weather, and they came down to it, and basically, Mike went to Lou Piniella and said, hey, we're not going to be able to play the game, but would you consider doing something fun? We'd like to do a little home run hitting contest. We have this kid by the name of David Ortiz who can really hit the ball, and I'm sure you guys might like to see him hit today. So Lou said, oh, sure, we'll do that. So, of course, Alex was the big, draw in Appleton because he had been there just, a year earlier, 2 years earlier. So he was the big draw. But they had Ken Griffey and all their other stars at the time there, too. David Ortiz got up, though, and stole the show. He hit bombs left and right. I think their jaws dropped to the ground. Dan Wilson, their catcher at the time, just said it was unbelievable to see this kid hit. So yeah, I don't know what happened or why they, how they traded him eventually, but I think they made a big mistake, to say the least.
20-year-old in Appleton, Wisconsin, and the future Hall of Famer. All right, so
Yeah.
1996. Now you're with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yes.
How long did you spend with the Brewers, and what were your most rewarding moments?
Jesse, I was home with the Brewers and working for Commissioner Seelig at the time. I think one of my most memorable moments was being invited into his office right when I got there. And I walk in, and just sitting to his right was Paul Beeston, who was the Toronto Blue Jays president at the time, I believe it was his title. And he had worked with Commissioner Seelig in the front office of the Major League Baseball as well. So I got to meet him. But the funniest thing was they were just finishing up a call. And the call happened to be with George Steinbrenner. So I got to hear the tail end of that. And I also got to hear the afterwards where Mr. Seelig said to Mr. Beeston, can you believe that guy? After all the things I've done for him, he goes and stabs me in the back like that. So I got to hear him commiserate about George Steinbrenner a little bit.
Wow. So this is just amazing to me. The people that you know, the people that you've worked for, worked with, came across your path. When Bud Selig was made commissioner of baseball, did you drop him a note and just say, hey, maybe I need to call in a favor?
You know what? As it happens, I actually he came out to see our new ballparks a couple of times. So I have kept in a little bit of touch with him, but obviously haven't been real close to him. The funniest thing about Mr. Seelig was, and not many people know this about him, but he would go out every game and sit behind home plate. He'd bring his Diet Coke and he'd sit probably about 40 rows. It was 50 rows deep, and he would sit about 40 rows back, right behind home plate. And there'd usually be nobody there. And I would sit probably about 6 or 7 seats over to the side. He'd come out every night and we'd chat, and the Brewers didn't have a good team. They had some good players, John Jaha, Jose Valentin, a few good players that they had back then, but really struggled, So a lot of nights it was in front of, 7,000, 10,000, 12,000 people in that 50,000 seat old county stadium at the time. So, but he would come out every night. We'd have a nice conversation and got to know him real well through that. And then ended up once he became full-time commissioner, I worked for his daughter, Wendy Seelig-Prieb. So, and Laurel Prieb, her husband. So got to know their family really well. I do stay in contact with them. So more Laurel and Wendy than I do Mr. Seelig. But I did see Mr. Seelig for his book signing with Mr. Hardrecourt about 6-7 months ago.
How did you come to leave the Brewers?
You know what? I wasn't going to. We had bought a house. We were solid. We lived in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee where the Watts live, the Watts family of the NFL. And we were having just a wonderful time. Our daughter had just been born, Sarah, and we were good. We were staying forever. Miller Park, we just broke ground for Miller Park. But a gentleman from Capital Broadcasting in Durham, North Carolina called and said, hey, we're moving the Class A Carolina League Durham Bulls to Myrtle Beach. and we know you have some experience with building a ballpark ground level up. We need somebody to do that right here with us. We want to move the Atlanta Braves single A franchise to Myrtle Beach and build a new stadium. So would you be interested? And I told him no, but the gentleman, Bob Lind, said, Steve, you know what? Why don't you just bring your wife, your family, and come down to Myrtle Beach? We'll get you a nice little oceanfront place, and you can just have a great little vacation with your family. Well, that was okay. I said, sure, I'll take a little vacation. And my wife agreed to that. And we're sitting first night as the ocean breeze is coming in off in the waves. You can hear just beautiful, great meal right on the ocean side at a nice restaurant, the Breakers. And, you know, I leaned over and asked her, I said, well, what do you think? Do you like this? And she answers back, well, you know, it's a great place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live here. So, but you know what? And we said no. But then, you know, they persisted, and after a couple of no's, we looked at each other and said, well, it's getting too good to pass up. So we decided to take the offer, and we were off from Milwaukee to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So, and we moved the Durham Bulls, the famous Durham Bulls Carolina League team, to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, now the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. So, so a lot of fun. Glad we did it, but you know, we were never going to leave Milwaukee ever.
How did the city of Myrtle Beach embrace its new minor league team?
Fantastic. I mean, it was a dream. We had great crowds. I think we averaged somewhere in the 3,500 range per night in a 4,000 seat stadium through a 70-game home schedule. So got off to a great start. It's been a solid franchise ever since the inception in the late 90s, early 2000s. It has been consistent. You know, Chuck Greenberg bought the team, the former Texas Rangers owner. And now Chuck's running it he bought it from Capital Broadcasting. And it still, to this day, has done extremely well.
Let me ask you about the players. We're going business, baseball.
Yes.
Myrtle Beach at the time has the top young players coming up through the Atlanta Braves system. The very first year, there's Rafael Furcal, there's Marcus Giles, there's Jason Marquis.
Yep.
Stories developed from the players you had with Myrtle Beach.
Well, Marcus Giles was like a 56th round pick. I mean, he was a late pick, kind of an afterthought. And I think Marcus said he was 5'6" in the program, but he couldn't have been more than 5'4". I mean, he was just a little tiny guy. But I tell you what, he was one of the toughest guys that I have ever seen on a baseball field. He took out, there was a catcher playing for Potomac, and Marcus was rounding third base, and I could just see what was going to happen. He took the catcher and planted him in the dugout. I mean, he just plowed him. And this is when you could still run into the catcher. But Marcus was safe. He dislodged the ball, but it just showed me, for a little guy, he was tough as nails. And I just knew that he was going to be a big leaguer someday. And people were taking notice of him at that point. When he came from Macon, he wasn't so much of a big prospect, but after Macon and coming into Myrtle Beach, once Rafael Furcal got there for the second half of the season, his batting average went from the low 300s to about 330. And both of them were the next middle infield of the Atlanta Braves after that year. So, and then, of course, we got Adam LaRoche coming at first base, and you know, Mike Hessman was a big leaguer. It was our third baseman. So it was an all major league infield at the time that we had. So, you know, it was wonderful. And then we had a guy named Junior, was also a big leaguer, shortstop that came the next year. And I can't recall his name, but he was a 10, 12-year big leaguer as well. So we had a lot of talent come through Myrtle Beach early.
I think it was Brignac.
Brignac.
Yeah.
Junior Brignac. Was it? Was he was our center fielder, maybe?
I want to go back to Mike Hessman.
Yes, Mike Hessman.
Mike Hessman, you saw him coming up. Steve, he's the minor league career home run champion. Nobody's hit more home runs than Mike Hessman. Any thoughts?
What is it? The Crash Davis of the minor leagues? Yeah. Well, and Mike did make it to the big leagues for a while, but it was kind of towards the tail end of his career. But what a great guy. I think he was about 6'5". So you don't see many infielders that are 6'5". Richie Sexton, but Mike he was a very unique guy, just a quality person. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's doing something really big right now. I don't know what his position is, but wherever he is, I'm sure he's been very successful. I haven't followed him, but what a great guy.
I believe that he's a major league coach currently. So I'll track that down for you. Meanwhile, I wanted to ask you about the weather. There was the ice, there was the snow in Milwaukee and in Appleton. Now you're in Myrtle Beach. What obstacles did you have to deal with in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina?
Oh, man. It's funny, but when I was leaving the Milwaukee Brewers, a lot of the front office guys would come up to me and just say, man, what a waste having you go to Myrtle Beach, Steve, because you don't even golf, and there's 120 golf courses there. So they were all lamenting the fact that, I should not be taking that position, so that it should go to somebody who enjoys golf. So Myrtle Beach, getting used to the weather there was unique. I mean, tarping, we would sometimes tarp, we tarped 21 days straight once. And we had sometimes 3 and 4 times a day that we'd have to take the tarp on and take it off. We'd put it on at night before we went home, and we'd get up at sunrise to take it off. And this was consistently, and if it was a rainy season, it was almost like Florida in that sense. There were certain years, though, that I felt like I was in really good shape just from tarping. It wasn't from working out, it's from tarping.
Hold on, 21 straight days?
Yes.
You hit day 22. Was there champagne that was popped?
No, it was just kind of a weird set of circumstances. We had long homestand with maybe a short road trip in between. Travel in the Carolina League was very, very different. And we had some different special events going on too, but yeah, and it kind of sneaks up on you. You don't realize it when you're in the middle of it until it's all done. And I think Brian Dolgan, who is our radio announcer, is the one who kind of informed us, hey, you realize it's been 21 straight days that we've been doing straight. So, it just, like I said, when you get in the middle of a season, you just kind of go on autopilot through it. You just kind of, because your body just, it's almost numb.
Sounds like a radio guy.
8 a.m. to, yeah, you know what it's like, man. You come in early in the morning, sometimes at sunup, and you're there until the wee hours of the morning.
Mike Hessman, by the way, hitting coach for AAA Toledo. And I believe that he's currently with the Detroit Tigers at their summer camp, helping to instruct. All right. So now you're with Myrtle Beach. What causes you to leave Myrtle Beach, South Carolina?
I hate to say it's another story similar, but it is. I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Mike Hansen. Miles Wolf, who was from Durham, North Carolina, actually gave Mike my name. And I never put in a resume in baseball pretty much my whole life. And it's just kind of weird how it happens. And they were building a new stadium in Joliet, Illinois. And he goes, what do you know about Joliet? And I said, I know the movie, The Blues Brothers. And that's about all I know about Joliet, Mike. I said, he asked, would you be interested in coming and checking it out? It's a very unique project. The city's building the stadium. They're using riverboat funds to build it, so there'll be no debt on it. And it's going to be this beautiful Taj Mahal right in downtown Joliet as part of a rebuilding project for downtown Joliet. So there again, I said, I don't think I'm too interested, Mike. He goes, well, would you just come and take a look at it, please? And it's a unique project. We'll pay your way. We'll pay you, whatever, you know, for the day and make sure that it's well worth your while to do that. And I said, okay, I'll come down and take a look, and maybe there's some things I can help on the construction or the plans or whatever. So I said I would do that. Well, Mike got me, took me out to one of the local country clubs that he had belonged to, and we were sitting at lunch, and he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, it's going to be a great job for somebody. He goes, what do you mean somebody? What about yourself? I said, well, this might not be the right fit for me. You know, I'm definitely an Atlanta Braves guy, always have been, love working with John Sherholtz and the Braves and, you know, their whole system, and really not interested in leaving. So, but they came to me with an offer to be a part owner too, and gain sweat equity in the team over time that I would work there. So the project itself, plus being an opportunity to be a co-owner of a team without having to invest hard dollars, was pretty appealing to me at the time. So it's amazing how people can hit your hot button at times, you know, and becoming an owner had really never really crossed my mind, but it's been something that, you know, I always thought would be kind of cool to be an owner in minor league baseball. And the Northern League at the time was the preeminent independent baseball league in all of baseball. And I went there and had a great experience. Built another new ballpark, beautiful ballpark in downtown Joliet. We had a great 5 years, and you know, it was complete pleasure to be there. I love the people of Joliet. Try to get back there whenever I can. The mayor there was wonderful. The city council, just really just you know, fell in love with the area, and it was wonderful.
If you don't mind my asking, you're now the king of this in building and seating Wisconsin, Myrtle Beach, Joliet. Has there been winter meeting after winter meeting, or headhunter after headhunter? How many teams have you turned down now over the years who have also said, Steve, we got a new stadium, what do you think?
You know what? It's been fun. I still remember sitting down with Gary Mays and Bob Murphy from the Dayton Dragons and consulting with them. You know, and I half expected that Gary and Bob would say, hey, you need to join us. But you know, it's been more of that than anything, is just, you know, and I've never really charged for anything like that. I went to Sevierville, Tennessee, and helped them, you know, looked at their designs, met with their city council and their mayor. And I've done a lot of those things, but, you know, there've been a few other opportunities, but, you know, I think getting one new stadium in your lifetime, you count yourself as very lucky and fortunate. I've had 4. So, and if you count Miller Park, it's 5. So, so for me, I've just lived a charmed life, and, you know, the Lord's been very good to me. So.
Well, 1 is lucky. Let's get to the 4th. So we're working our way through. And this, I believe, is the normal Corn Belters. Am I right?
Yes.
How normal were you feeling?
Oh, man. And too, same thing. I got a call from a guy named Alan Sender. You know, and Alan was a local businessman and really well connected politically. And a friend of mine by the name of Mike Thiessen, who had been working on that project in Normal, and said, you know, we've stalled a little bit. There's one other group, Jerry Reinsdorf's son, Michael Reinsdorf, and a guy named Steve Edelson, who are looking at it. But, you know, we kind of want to see if you're interested. And Mike Veck, and Mike and I had been friends for many years. And Mike then called me and said, you know, we really should take a look at this one, Malliet. It's the last great Midwest market that's still available for minor league baseball. And I said, really? I said, Mike, I don't know a lot about Normal. I know it's Central Illinois. You know, tell me more about it. And he elaborated that he thought it was going to be a wonderful market, and that the people there were great. And, you know, there was a lot of egg industry, a lot is centered around corn there. But there's also State Farm, a company called State Farm that's headquartered there. a company called Country Financial that's headquartered there. Electrolux was headquartered there. So there was a lot of corporate potential there as well. So, and that's one of my bailiwicks is selling to corporations and getting them involved with the team. And so it really did appeal to me. And I didn't know what role Mike wanted me in, or if he just wanted me as a consultant, but he said, no. He goes, I want you as a full partner. We're going to go in there together. So, Mike got me interested in Normal, and eventually I ended up there.
You began in affiliated minor league baseball with Wisconsin, with Appleton Foxes, and then a Major League Baseball, and then affiliated minor league baseball with the Braves organization in Myrtle Beach. But then those last two teams, Joliet and Normal, independent ball. And I'm speaking as someone who's worked in the Can-Am League, the Frontier League. I love the indie leagues, but I've only been there 2 seasons. You've been there many more years. Compare and contrast for you what it's been like to work within the organized affiliated baseball structure and the independent leagues.
One of the big things is that as a general manager in minor league unaffiliated baseball or independent baseball, you're much more overseeing the baseball side of things. So you're dealing with players, signing players, overseeing the baseball staff as well. Whereas at a minor league level in affiliated baseball, you're really focusing on the business side. So you have both in independent baseball that you oversee. So I got to tell you, it was like a kid in a candy shop for me to be in independent baseball, because I did get to scratch my itch in terms of baseball. And two, you do have some involvement, like we do with the Toronto Blue Jays, and there's some involvement there, and you get a little bit of that, but you're certainly not controlling the players you have, and you don't have really a lot of say in, who's playing shortstop that night or signing players. That's all done by the Toronto Blue Jays for us. So for me to be able to do that, it was another dream come true. That was the other side of baseball that I wanted to do that I never really got into or did. Obviously loved the business side of it too. So this just gave me the opportunity to do both, Jesse. And, I relished that opportunity, and I wouldn't change a thing or go back on it. It was a lot of fun to do. And, we had some really good people. Hal Lanier was my first manager in Normal, former National League Manager of the Year with the Houston Astros. And he was my first manager in Normal, so for the Corn Belters.
Let's bring this up to 2020, because in 2020, you were the Vice President of Business Development with the Lansing Lugnuts. And we can go back through the years, with all these different teams that you've worked with and the people that you've come across, it seems to me that you and Tom Dixon would have probably crossed paths along the way. When was the first time that you and Tom Dixon crossed paths?
It's funny. He saw me for the first time, in December this year, or November or December, and I walked into his office building, and he looked at me and he goes, "What happened?" I had long blonde hair, mullet, curly blonde hair when he knew me. He goes, "What happened to you?" And I probably gained about 40 pounds since then too. But he knew me back in the mid-90s when we were in the Midwest League together. And we'd be in meetings together, and I'd sit by Tom, and I always enjoyed talking to him. He was always down to earth and just a really good guy. And we kind of stayed in touch over the years. So, and there were a couple of times when he would call me and say, "Hey, there's a job that I think you'd be interested in, and new ballpark," because he knew that was turning into a niche for me, even though I didn't intend it to be a niche. New ballparks was definitely a niche. So Tom had remembered me throughout the years, and I just happened to, after we sold Normal, which we sold after the 2018 season, I stayed with them for a short time just to consult in the kind of the layover period and help them get going a little bit. But then I was looking for a position. So I just dropped Tom a note and said, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to get out there. This is the first time I think I've ever built a resume, Tom. Here it is. And I'm just kind of looking around. He goes, by chance, timing has it that Nick Greaser, longtime employee of ours and president of the team, is leaving. And, we're looking for somebody. Would you be interested? And I said, Tom, it's, we've always kind of looked for a way to work together, and it's just never quite worked out timing wise, but man, this might be our opportunity. So one thing led to another, and I ended up here in Lansing, Michigan. So took us a while, but Tom and I are working together.
These are unusual circumstances that we find ourselves in now. No minor league baseball season. The Lemonade League. How do you wrap your head around such an unprecedented season with such an unprecedented obstacle as a pandemic?
Yes. You know what? And two, a lot of credit to Tyler Parsons and Greg Kiger. But I got to tell you, I got to hand it to Tom Dixon again. Tom is a brilliant marketer. And Tom actually, I don't know when the thought popped into his head to take the lemons that we were being handed by Major League Baseball and turn it into lemonade. And so thus the Lemonade League by Tom Dixon. And I just immediately said, Tom, that's brilliant. It's, it's right there in front of us. Somebody should have thought of it, but nobody did. You did. And like I said, he's just a brilliant marketer. And the yellow baseballs, throwing out the first lemon of the game instead of the first baseball. I think people are going to love it. And I'm excited about it. And I can't wait to get it rolling. Obviously, we're waiting for Governor Whitmer to give us the go-ahead. And we're hoping that right after the 4th of July that she's going to do that. We're hopeful that she will. But I think people are going to enjoy seeing the local college kids too. The kids from Michigan State and Jake Boss, all the kids from some of the local junior colleges, Oakland University. Our coach is from Oakland U, and he's a former Michigan State guy. But I think people are going to enjoy it, and they're going to enjoy coming out and getting the same hot dog and cold beer and peanuts that they've always had here in the same atmosphere. Obviously, things will be a little bit different. Obviously, too, we're going to do some things that maybe appeal to people, like the 7-inning game. We want to see how people react to a 7-inning game and being 2 hours and 15 minutes instead of almost 3 hours. We think that's a key for baseball in the future, is shortening the games, making them more exciting. Another one of Tyler Parsons and Greg's ideas was no extra innings, home run hitting contest to decide the game. So I love all of that. I think it's maybe before its time from a baseball perspective, but I think baseball is going to be adopting some of these things in the future. And I think these guys are ahead of the ball. That's why I love working here with everybody. And you, Jesse, it's been a pleasure working with you. I think one of the best in the business, big league announcer right here in Lansing, Michigan. So, no, it's just been a real pleasure. Tom Dixon, class guy, been owner here for 25 years now. And Sherry, they did just a wonderful job coming in here. I always looked at the Lansing Lugnuts as I did the Durham Bulls. And I got a chance to work for the Durham Bulls once. And now I'm having the chance to work with the Lansing Lugnuts. So to me, two of the stalwarts in the business, two of the highest level, most highly thought of teams throughout minor league and Major League Baseball. So, and I'm having the opportunity to do that. So just a real honor to be here.
Steve, I'm glad to have you here on. I'm glad to work with you. Steve Malliet, Vice President of Business Development with the Lansing Lugnuts. Thank you so much for giving of your time.
Jesse, it's been my pleasure, and can't wait to give everybody a season here and get the Lemonade League going.
That's right. We need to figure out a Go Nuts slogan with the Lemonade League somehow. Whatever that might be, we'll figure it out.
Yes. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Go Nuts, Lugnuts.